Magnolia. So this is a film that came out in 1999, directed, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. So this is a film that has a lot of hype surrounding it. It's considered to be one of the best films of all time, one of the greatest films of all time in the 20th century and of all time. So I had a lot of hype before going to watch the film. I've been wanting to watch this film for a long time, and I watched it. I finished watching it quite recently, and I really wanted to share my thoughts. What did I think of it? Simply put, I didn't find the film as good as I thought it would be. There were definitely a lot of things that were quite disappointing, as well as things that I really, really enjoyed and liked. So it's kind of a mixed bag, really. And I really was expecting to be blown away because I watched some other Paul Thomas Anderson films like There Will Be Blood, The Master. These are the two films that I watched and really liked. I've also watched Licorice Pizza, which I'm very mixed about because there's some portions of that movie that I really enjoyed, but other things and some of the subject matter and the ending, it didn't really gel well with me. And I was really hoping to see how this movie turns out because I felt like I really vibe with Paul Thomas Anderson's style, the way he writes his screenplays, the way he directs the action, the acting, how raw and real it is. I feel like that's one of his main strengths, where he shows the real raw side of people, even if it's really ugly. He just shows it, and it's very very real and intense. And this movie, it does have that intensity, but I felt like it wasn't as authentic as films like The Master and There Will Be Blood, which are the two films that I really put up there as one of the best films ever made, like two of the best films ever made. So, what didn't I like about this? Okay, before we move on to that, I want to say what I did like about it. I think the movie opens up very, very strong. It's very kinetic. It gets the story and the themes moving very, very fast. The sound design and the filmmaking is very amazingly done because I feel like the the director really wanted to show something very unique and new. He wanted to present his vision of America, his vision about coincidences that happen in real life, how real life is stranger than fiction. So those are all very interesting to me. Like I felt like this first like 10 minutes of the movie, I felt like I was watching a really, really good YouTube video essay, like the current video essays that we have now on YouTube. This guy was doing all the way back in 1999. So it was so interesting, so cool to watch. And as the movie introduces all these characters, it's going in a momentum that's really strong, really good. Um, but as the movie keeps going into the main story, the main scenes of what these characters are doing for the next like hour, 2 hours, I think the movie really struggles to maintain that momentum. And of course, a lot of people will disagree because this is a very well loved movie. As I've seen, I've tried to see if there are mixed reviews, but there's very little mixed reviews or negative reviews. Um, and as I can see, this movie is really one of those movies where you got to be really into it from the start, and you got to be really into the filmmaking style all the way through. Even if the writing falters, you still got to be into the filmmaking style, otherwise it's not going to work. For me, I like the filmmaking style a lot, but the writing was really not working for me in a lot of places as the movie developed. Like, what I can understand is that the director had a really strong opening. The opening 20 minutes, he had it all in his head. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he wrote. and he had a strong idea. And then as he wrote it, he got to the middle section. I think he didn't really know how to make it interesting. I think he couldn't maintain the momentum. He just drew different scenes, different types of scenes that on paper it sounds interesting. It is definitely has a good idea, but the way it's all written and executed, I think is really the main problem that I have. There's multiple stories that are going on, right? So when the story cuts from, let's say there's an interview taking place with Tom Cruise, it cuts to another situation that's taking place where this man is dying, or this man is gay and he's like coming out. And then it cuts back to the interview and we're at the same place that we cut away from before. So I'm wondering, wait a second, this is not moving. This is not progressing. It's like it cuts to from this point and then cuts to another point, another story that it wants to say. And it's like it just gets stuck. It doesn't progress or move in the way that it's supposed to. And I'm wondering, okay, how many hours is this taking place in? Like, it's supposed to be 24 hours. Okay, then I would expect that there's a lot more things happening within that 24 hours than just this, right? So, I mean, there is a lot of things happening throughout the movie. But when you look at this story individually, just one story, there's not that many things that happen. It's just one character does this one thing. He's in one location for the most part, and then he moves to another location, and then he moves to the third location, and that's it. That's his whole story. And then that happens with other characters as well. Like there's a rotation of the same locations that they go to. And from a production standpoint, because I've made films before, what I can see is that they've shot the scenes that are in the same location, that go on for multiple scenes on the same day, or at least the same amount of time. Around that same time they shot all of it, and it's like a very economic way to do this kind of a very grand movie, right? Like the amount of locations that is in this movie overall is a lot. Like there's like 50 locations or something, and it must have taken a long time to actually finish filming the movie. I'm pretty sure of that. That is not actually the problem. I'm just thinking what happens individually in the story, I feel like it's not enough. There's got to be something more than just one character that's just like crying and being really stressed out. Getting more into detail, like even more than that, right? It's okay if it's just one location, one thing that's happening to these characters, to this like singular character. But the problem is that there's not much subtlety with what it says. It relies a lot on music. And I'm thinking whenever directors relies heavily on music to convey the emotions, to force the emotion on the audience, that's a sign that like the director is not really confident in his own writing. And yes, if the music was not there, I feel like it wouldn't. Actually, I feel like it would have been more strong if there wasn't much music, because the audience is allowed to just feel through the movie and look at the movie for what it is more objectively. I did research that this movie was based on a musician. Like a musician was very strongly involved in this project. And so that's why Paul Thomas Anderson, the director, he incorporated a lot of her soundtrack into the movie. So okay, that's definitely an interesting idea. But I felt like this movie was it might have benefited from either making more use of that music and making it more like a musical, or going more in the realistic route, which I feel like that's kind of what originally not originally, but that is the way that this movie should have gone, because the cinematography is realistic. The editing, the way the characters are, it's very realistic. The production design is realistic. You would expect that everything is more cohesive in that sense. At least from my perspective, that's what I felt. And you go back to you go to other Paul Thomas Anderson films like There Will Be Blood. The movie is very realistic, and I don't remember the movie relying so much on music. It's very it lets the audience come to their own conclusions about what this character is doing, what is going on, because that movie is about a villain, right? It's about this very greedy, narcissistic, misanthropic villain, right? But the movie doesn't really judge that character. Um, yeah, that's one of the things that I really liked about the movie. It doesn't judge the character, doesn't force any emotions on the audience, like saying that, oh, this is a bad guy or this is a good guy. This is how you should feel. This is how you should feel there. But in this movie, it's what all throughout. That's what this movie is trying to do, and I didn't really enjoy that. Um, and I felt like a lot of the way that it was written and directed, the director, like as I think back at it, it feels like a movie that was made by someone on drugs. Maybe that's intentional. I don't know. Maybe he was on drugs when he wrote and directed the movie, and he might have thought that everything that he was writing was very interesting and so profound. But once he actually put it on paper, on the screen, it isn't as profound as he thought in his head. That's what how I felt when I was watching this movie, and definitely the 3 hour runtime. Right. Personally, I love long movies. I actually prefer a movie that's very comprehensive and long. But this movie didn't really have to be 3 hours long. And funnily enough, Paul Thomas Anderson, I think he had an interview later on, many years after this movie came out. The interviewer asked him what he thought of this movie, and he said, "Oh, I should have cut 20 minutes off this movie." So, like, I feel like it would have benefited the movie quite a lot because there were a lot of scenes that, not a lot of scenes, but it's just within that same scene itself, you could keep the scene, but just reduce it so that it's not repeating the same dialogues. Like there, I remember Julianne Moore's scenes were some of the most annoying scenes in the movie. I really did not like a lot of the scenes that she was in. Like her character was good, but there was a lot of repetitive dialogues, repetitive scenes where she was just going over the same things over and over again. And even the twist reveal of what her character is, why she did what she did, why she's feeling the way she's feeling. I feel like the idea is there, but it could have been much better executed. Like spoilers for someone who didn't see the movie. Like she married the guy because she wanted the money, but then later she regretted it, and she has mistakes. She has done a lot of mistakes, and I'm just wondering, like, okay, why are we spending so much time with this character? All right, we have not seen much interesting things that this character is doing, other than crying and having panic attacks. Of course, I'm not against anyone like that. I'm not trying to victim blame or anything. But the way this movie presents it, I think there could have been something much more to this character than just that. Because, that it feels very shallow of just presenting this character as just that, Yeah. Aside from that, the characters that I really enjoyed throughout this movie was the character of Philip Seymour Hoffman. I thought he had a very interesting character. Like we don't know much about him, but we really see the humanity in that character where, he's this nurse, he's a male nurse taking care of this rich man that is dying. And there's a lot of things that we learn. Like he takes certain decisions. We think, oh, this guy's just a pervert. And then we learn actually he did this because of this. And then we're like, oh, this is actually really interesting. That is so good. This is actually good writing. I wish there was more of this type of thing done with other characters as well. And then I really like John C. Riley's character as the policeman. I thought it was really interesting because typically you think that a police character is this very awful guy. He's dealing with corruption, or he himself is corrupt, and he's just a terrible guy. But in this movie, the way it presents him is just the total opposite of how you see a lot of the police characters. He's very humble, he's very nice, he's very caring. We really see the humanity in this kind of guy that's supposed to be very tough. So that was actually really, really interesting. I feel that kind of character could have been explored a little more. Um, and yeah, that's about it. I feel like those characters were really solid. And the other characters, I feel it's either they were not, that the idea was there for them to be well written. It's either that they were too annoying, or they were too cliched, or they were a bit of both. Um, I couldn't fault the performances. I think the performances of all the actors were solid all the way through. They did their A game, but the writing is what I feel should have been much better for these actors. Like whenever it comes to ensembles, the actors really bring forward whatever material they got. With good writing, I think it could go all the way, right? Um, yeah, that's what I feel like. Other ensembles that came out, you could look at a movie like Pulp Fiction, right? It's very strong writing all the way through, and it's also the style also really works for that movie with these eccentric characters, these characters that are not really that good. I think it kind of works within that style. With the style that Paul Thomas Anderson is going for, I feel doesn't really work as well. Where there's a lot of unlikable characters who are really, selfish and pathetic. Yeah, I can understand what he's trying to do with these kind of selfish characters who are coming to terms with their own selfishness, and they're coming over the reality, and they're becoming more empathetic, they're becoming more kind, and they're becoming more kind to each other. That's a very interesting concept. That's an amazing concept, and I just think other films have done it much better. Um, Other things I want to talk about is Tom Cruise does a very Andrew Tate like character. It was because when this movie came out, it was around the time that pickup artistry was very popular. It was gaining traction, so I think that's why this character is there. And the reasoning for this character is kind of like, oh man, it's another one of those. It's like that's the thing that I didn't really like about this movie. It's the backstories of these characters are very cliche. It's like so obviously like, oh, this guy is this Andrew Tate like character is only that way because his dad left him and he had to take care of his mother. That's why he became like Andrew Tate. And then there's this other character like she's a drug addict, and she's also like a whore, like the way that movie shows it, right? So the only reason she's that way is because she got molested, and that's why she became like that. Like we've seen this so many times in so many movies. Um, and then there's this other character of I don't want to reveal exactly what happened, but there's another character who is like he's that way because he was a child star, and he wasn't popular anymore, and then he's gay, and then that's why he's kind of rejected by society, and that's why he became a loser. And then there's this child star on the current times who's really smart, but the dad is just He's trying to profit off of him, and he's really selfish, and that's pretty much it. There's not that much, you know. Another thing that I felt was like it's very two dimensional. There's not that much outside of the thing that we see. Like, okay, this character is evil, and then that's it. Like we see it in a surface level. There's not much depth to it over that, you know. And there's not that much that happens after that aside from like, oh, once it becomes the end, they might have learned their lesson or not. But leading up to that, if they had more depth, the audience would care more. At least for me, I would be more invested in these characters if I saw them more three dimensional rather than just these characters that just do this one thing, or they just have this one or two traits, Um, yeah, that's really what I felt about this movie. Um, Another thing that I saw overall was like, um, in America and a lot of developed countries, I think the problem that a lot of people have is that they prioritize individual pleasure over everything else. So whatever they find is pleasurable for them, they don't care how it affects the others. They don't care how it affects their family, their kids, their loved ones, or the society. They do not care. They just care about themselves, and that is why the society in America is so crazy. And it's not just in America, it's in any developed countries, any country that's very materialistic. You could even say capitalist if you want to. So whenever a country is like that, where they prioritize individual happiness over everything else, the society just goes down. Um, I believe, and that's what is shown in this movie. Like all the characters, either the parents are really selfish or the kids are really selfish. Um, no, actually, in this movie, it shows the adults as more selfish. The parents, and how they screwed over the millennial generation. And yeah, it was what was shown in the movie, and definitely it's a very important topic for sure. And I think other movies like American Beauty did it, and there was also Twin Peaks, which I think it came out in the '90s, early '90s, and that's a show that I really love. I think that's a masterpiece, and definitely I do want to review that show on this channel. I want to share my thoughts. That show was a very surrealist show that also featured many topics that are shown in this movie and utilized it in that, and I thought that was a masterpiece. Um, so yeah, I think these topics are really important to talk about and show, um, but it has to be done better, I think, and it has to be done with a little more subtlety, a little more depth, um, a little less self-indulgence, um, a little less repetitiveness. Yeah. Aside from that, I think the opening 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes with the twist, with certain things that happen, I thought was very good. I thought it was, both sequences were really, really solid, really well done. But the middle section, which is about like most of the movie, which is like, let's say 70% of the movie, 70 or 60, I thought could have been much better. Um, yeah, that's pretty much what I thought. Um, Definitely, I want to review There Will Be Blood again. Sorry, I haven't reviewed that movie, but I want to watch it again and review it for this channel. I also really want to watch The Master, because that's a movie I watched such a long time ago. But it has still stuck in my head, because there's so much depth to that movie, and there's also so much subtlety. There's so much to think about, because there's not that much things that are said directly in Magnolia. This movie, there's so much said directly to the audience, like, oh, this character is evil, this person has to be kind to the other person, this guy is stressed out, and so many things are so in your face, you know. And I personally don't really like that much when a movie does it. I think it only works sometimes in like some scenarios. In this movie, it didn't work for me. Um, but in the master, it didn't do that. Didn't It wasn't so in your face. There was still a lot of subtlety. There was still a lot of things that the audience should think about, and that's why I like that movie. Same with There Will Be Blood. So yeah, that's pretty much what I thought of this movie. Do let me know what you thought, whether you think this is a masterpiece, whether this is one of your favorite movies of all time or not. If you thought this movie was also not that good, you can let me know. You can comment below. If you want to see more of these kinds of videos, do subscribe. Do let me know what other movie you want to review. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you in the next video.